The Bucks winning streak has extended to 16 games. They blow out the Brooklyn Nets and the Orlando Magic on back-to-back nights, and everyone played just about. Chris Middleton rested, but that was a question we had coming into these games. How are they going to manage the back-to-backs? We've asked questions about the offense, and we've asked questions about whether this team is priming itself for a championship run. So we can dive into all those things and what we saw from the Brooklyn Nets and Orlando Magic game. Let's get started.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Bucks. My name's Kane Pittman. You can see and hear me on this show Monday to Friday, and also find my work over at ESPN. And alongside me, the founder of brewhoop.com and longtime voice of the podcast, Frank Madden, for today's episode that's brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/Locked On today to get started. Of course, we thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first watch or first listen of every day. And I did mention we weren't going to be able to podcast after the Brooklyn game, which I was disappointed about because I watched that game and I was fired up with some of the things we saw, but we can touch on those today. And I'm just thankful that the Bucks went ahead and won this game tonight as well, so we can continue talking about the winning streak. But we appreciate you, the support of all our listeners and viewers. Subscribe, drop a like, drop a comment, because it helps us big time, and it's also free to do, which is nice for everyone involved. And it's drop a comment. It's my mum's birthday, so maybe you'd want to drop a comment on YouTube. Happy birthday to mum. She doesn't listen to this podcast, but maybe you can drop a comment. Happy birthday to Kane's mum. Frank, I said this to you, and I just mentioned it, but I'm glad the winning streak is still going. We've got 2 games to break down. Some really cool stuff in both of them, but I guess we start with the game we just watched against Orlando. A very back-to-back-ish offensive onslaught. 56 three-point attempts, but they knocked down 26 of them. And again, it did look like, for the most part, a game where this Bucks team that is just looking supreme with confidence right now was able to say to the Magic, look, little fellas, we're just going to keep you at arm's length because we know we can get the job done when we need to.
Yeah, I think looking at this kind of game the last 24 hours is sort of like it's this 2-pack of games. The first half in Brooklyn was sloppy, lots of turnovers, and just kind of like, come on, guys, you're gonna have to really give a little bit more than this. But the 3 quarters thereafter, or 3 halves thereafter, I think you have to feel pretty good about. And Bucks again looked like a team that is in the midst of a 16-game winning streak, and just second half last night just looked like a team that kind of felt like, okay, yeah, you got a 10-point lead at halftime, but we're better. We'll figure it out. And obviously, as usual, things starting with Giannis Antetokounmpo, who actually finished 2 games in a row. He made it out of the first quarter twice in 24 hours, which is a great sign. It's always this thing with Giannis playing in a back-to-back. Is it good that he's playing in a back-to-back? Should he be resting? I will take it as a positive that he's feeling healthy and good and energized. And maybe has a little bit more of the hop in his step, given that he hasn't played a lot of basketball in the last 2 weeks. And we saw it last night. I mean, some of the plays he made in transition last night, I called out. I mean, he had 2 incredible dunks in transition, had multiple other 3-point plays, did a ton of damage with his left hand, had another awesome dunk with his right hand, broke out a couple of Dirk step backs last night, hit one tonight as well.
He hit it deep. That was the normal variety.
Yeah, that was the longest Dirk step back. The guy wasn't even really that close to him. He really didn't need to go to a Dirk step back, but I think he's actually more comfortable. Seems like he gets like a better release, like a better loft on the shot when he's doing that little step back, which it's funny. I mean, a couple of years ago, I think hardcore fans, like probably many of you listening, probably remember there was a stretch there where Giannis got pretty comfortable sort of turning middle of the lane to these little kind of fadeaway jump shots, not step backs, but fadeaways that were kind of in the middle of the lane. And the nice part about those shots was he really did a nice job of getting loft on the ball. Just, I don't know, his touch just looks a little more natural when he's moving away a little bit. And he's obviously not too deep. And when he's straight on the basket, you also get the benefit of the roll sometimes because you've got the backboard behind you, which of course you don't have on those glamour shot baseline fadeaways. And we saw it tonight, the Dirk step back that he hit tonight, he got a friendly bounce on that shot, which again speaks to the fact that he's getting up there with nice loft, not throwing a fastball at the rim. Hit another kind of awkward little kind of mid-range jump shot as well after he sort of lost the handle. So
it's got that Chris Middleton touch, Frank.
Yeah, exactly. Finally, after a decade of playing together, the mid-range jumper is beginning to rub off on Giannis. But I mean, for him to come back, we've obviously been sort of like agonizing. I'm like, oh, is this a wrist, is knee, quad, like what's going on? For him to come back and physically look the way he did the last 2 nights, tonight making free throws, hit 8 in a row at one point, hits 3 threes. I thought his passing, was also really good tonight. And to put up, back-to-back 30-point nights, do it in under 30 minutes both nights. So again, you get these double-digit wins. And of course, yesterday there was, it took them a little while, about 3 quarters, to really kind of get going. They really kind of put the foot to the pedal to the floor, whatever the
paints in the point.
They kind of took them till the end of the third quarter on Tuesday night. Tonight, obviously, they kind of were playing from the front from the beginning. But Giannis, I thought the end of the third quarter last night was pretty important. Tonight, Giannis comes back with about 90 seconds to go in the third quarter tonight, and I think he scored 4 points. He had a 3-pointer, then he got the line, hit 1 out of 2, and then created another 2-pointer. I think it was for AJ Green, if I remember correctly. And so they were kind of able to finish that quarter out strong. And again, Cole Anthony shot way better than I normally expect Cole Anthony to shoot. Markelle Fultz has been very good of late. He was very good again tonight. But overall, the funny part is, I mean, I guess it makes sense that I haven't talked about the 3-point shooting, because the 26 threes, that totally snuck up on me. I didn't realize until Lisa Byington called out that were at 23. I didn't realize that they were having just that big of a 3-point shooting night. And so, I mean, to have just sort of like a ho-hum, oh yeah, they finished with 26 threes. I mean, a few years ago, that would have been an NBA record, if not for the Bucks Magic night in Miami a couple years ago. So this has been a team that has not had to live and die by the 3-pointer of late, especially when Giannis is out there. But hey, second night of a back-to-back, if you can dial up 26 threes and get contributions from seemingly everybody hitting threes, that just obviously makes everything a lot easier. And their defense actually was slightly below their normal league best average tonight, so which has been rare. I think they've only had about 3 games where they've been over 110 points per 100 in the last 13, 14 games. So the Magic were slightly above that today, but overall, hey, no complaints. Banked another 2 wins in the span of 24 hours. And I believe the Bucks are now 7-1 on the second night of back-to-back. So even with the resting that they've had to do, Chris obviously not playing back-to-backs. This was Joe Ingles' first back-to-back. He splashed a bunch of threes, which was nice to see. And obviously Giannis playing on the second night of a back-to-back, looking very fresh and energized. Obviously, a really encouraging sign. And I don't know how much the winning streak matters to these guys. Clearly, again, these guys are winners. Many of these guys are NBA champions. And it just feels like things are clicking and going very well right now. And again, now they get a couple of days off before a big game against the Sixers on Saturday. But yeah, just, man, no drama. Nobody's like, the national media isn't really talking about the Bucks, because it's just like, well, we expect them to be really good. And, they're just out there crushing it, and without much drama, but it's pretty fun. Hey, if ESPN doesn't want to talk about it, Kane, we'll talk about it here on Locked On Bucks, and it's a really fun time to be watching the Milwaukee Bucks.
The thing with that is, because you see it a lot, and I'm like, well, first of all, we do talk about it every day, so we are so far immersed in this more than just about anyone. So it's hard for us to get a grip on it, and most of the, even the fans that perhaps aren't everyday listeners. Everyone should be everyday listeners. Make it your first listen of every day. Locked On Bucks. It's a fantastic podcast. But I kind of understand, because I tweeted about it. Like, this Bucks team, it's been so sputtering, and there's been guys in and out, and it's just been, you look at the record and it doesn't necessarily match up with maybe how I've felt about this team for much of the year. And even this winning streak, at the start of the streak, they had some scratchy performances. It's only really been, for me, over the last week or so, where you're like, okay, it feels like things are starting to ramp up here. And maybe it is just as simple as having more guys on the floor than they've had for much of the season. I don't know. But I think we will start to see more of this. I think we'll start to see Giannis come back into the MVP conversation as well. Just a couple of really quick notes before, because I want to talk to you about Jrue Holiday. I think this is the best we've seen him play. But I want to ask you that question and your thoughts on Jrue Holiday in just a second. 6 guys that knocked down at least 3 triples. That's a very high number. I wonder how many times that has happened. Maybe a bit in the modern NBA, but that's a lot. The other point is Michael Carter-Williams on my box score right here with a DMP coach's decision. I did not know he was still on the Orlando Magic. Was he
just got signed? He just got signed.
Wow.
Literally just got added.
Wow. They
were hoping that he was going to be the secret weapon against the Bucks, his old team, but I guess, he just didn't have quite enough reps to come in.
A game that I will never forget, Game 5 in Chicago back in the 2015 playoffs. Michael Carter-Williams, beautiful stuff. Always will have a bit of a
forced you to change your flight home to Australia, right?
That's right.
You were in Wisconsin, and then you unfortunately stayed for that horrendous return leg and 50 whatever point loss, which was 2 days before my wedding. But let's not, whatever. Long gone. Rearview mirror. We're in a much better place now.
I'll always have a soft spot for MCW, though. So shout out to him. Good to see him still hanging around the league. Last quick point. You mentioned some of the dunks that Giannis had, and he looked pissed off against the Brooklyn Nets. And I think Nick Claxton is on the list because he's had a couple of decent games against the Bucks, and I don't think Giannis really likes the way he goes about it. And he was trying to prove a point last night, which is what we love to see. And I mentioned the fact that he might be coming back into the MVP conversation, which brings us to our friends at FanDuel, and highly recommend everyone checks it out because the road to the postseason is absolutely underway. So now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. And I've got the MVP odds in front of me right now. Nikola Jokic, still really a pretty heavy favorite, minus 350. Joel Embiid at plus 700. Giannis is at plus 800. Now, this is staggering stuff because I just looked at this about 15 minutes ago, and he was at plus 1,000. So in the space of the last 10 minutes, he's gone from plus 1,000 into plus 800 because they know that he's coming. So anyway, don't waste time. Go to FanDuel because I think Giannis is going to get back in this MVP conversation. FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout at the same game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. So Jrue Holiday. There's been several moments over the last couple of months, really since the turn of the new year. He has been absolutely awesome. We know what he does defensively, and he's had a series of big defensive plays to close out games, but he's been on a scoring tear of late. He only had the 14 points against Brooklyn, but he was 7 of 12 from the field. Tonight against Orlando, he has another 23 points, efficient again. Actually didn't shoot the ball well from 3. He was the one guy who struggled. He was 1 for 7 from the outside here, but he had another 9 assists. And there's just been little things. Maybe it's the way he's shooting the ball. Maybe it's him deciding to absolutely throw one down tonight. But his confidence looks at an all-time high. And I just think this is the best version. We've seen him do incredible stuff in the postseason, but I think regular season, this is the best we've seen him over this last 6-week stretch.
I mean, I'll push back a little bit because I don't want to understate how good he was the last 2 regular seasons. And I just brought up his basketball reference page again because I wanted to take a look at it. And, like the efficiency the past 2 years was a little bit higher than it is this year. His scoring has gone up mainly because his usage has gone up, which of course is not surprising given Chris Middleton has been obviously far less available this season. And even when he's been back here, has been in a reserve role. So I think there's been a little bit of trade-off with Jrue in terms of, the percentages coming down a little bit. I mean, Jrue being at 41% from 3 last year and 39% the year before, right? You don't think of him as this knockdown 3-point shooter, but the last couple of years, I mean, it's wild to look at his 3-point shooting the few years before he came to Milwaukee. He was at 35%, 32.5%, and 33.7% in New Orleans. So people might remember when he came to Milwaukee, it was like, well, he's not that great of a shooter, he's not like a great floor spacer around Giannis. And instead, he's really been just consistently really good in that regard in terms of the 3-point shot. And this year, his volume is up significantly. He's at 38% from 3, but his shots. So like if you look per 36, the 3-point attempts have gone from 5.3, 5.2 the last 2 years to almost 7 this year. So he's really dialed up the 3-point shooting. And again, even if he shoots, a couple percent less from three, if he can add another couple of attempts per game, basically he's increasing his number of shots per minute by, practically 40%. That's a winning trade-off, even if the percentage is down slightly. So, the 2-point percentage is down a little bit. But overall, still getting the line as much as before, and his free throw percentage has been much better, right? He's at 86% versus 76 and 79% the past couple of years. So I think that, overall, you look at that, and then the playmaking, his assist numbers are the highest they've been since he's been in Milwaukee. Turnovers up a little bit as well. But yeah, offensively, I mean, it's a little bit different than he was the last couple of years, just because they've leaned on his scoring more. But he's just been tremendous. And it was interesting seeing Bill Simmons tweet about Jrue Holiday. I mean, again, Simmons doesn't tweet about the Bucks very much, but tweeting about Jrue Holiday and how he should be on an All-NBA team, I think it's pretty cool to see. And again, I think Bill Simmons, there's always a bit of like bias towards things he saw.
He
the
is
last
leaning.
time.
No, but he is
the
also
Celtic,
leaning hard into the Bucks,
right?
Yeah, but he's leaning hard into the Bucks because I think that there is a part of him that wants to act like, if we lose to the Celtics, if the Celtics lose to the Bucks, I can always say I was on the Bucks. I think there's a part of that.
Yeah, and to his credit, he also, after last season, he was very transparent in saying, like, if Middleton had been healthy, the Bucks would have beaten the Celtics. Like, he did not try to sugarcoat any of that. And so again, like, part of me is like, is he? Is he like trying to like reverse jinx it or something like that, or trying to make it seem more impressive for if the Celtics do beat the Bucks or top them in the regular season or something? But he's a bit, Bill Simmons too is correct. I mean, he's a big Giannis fan. You don't have to. I don't think that is ever going to be in doubt. And I think it's cool seeing Jrue get that type of recognition, and obviously getting the All-Star nod this year from the coaches was long overdue, I think. So yeah, I mean, again, I don't even want to. It's like having to pick between Jrue Holiday seasons, like picking between children here. I don't want to have to do it. I will say the other piece. I mean, I didn't quote any like defensive numbers just now when we were talking about that. I think qualitatively, I think this year he has been more engaged this year, I think, during the regular season than he was last year. I think last year, and this again wouldn't be shocking given that the guy had no offseason last year. Literally went from winning a championship to winning a gold medal to basically getting a couple weeks off and then having to start training camp. It felt like he picked his spots more defensively last year, which I don't begrudge him doing that a bit more. But man, I don't know. I mean, again, there's no way to statistically prove this necessarily, but it just feels like we've seen sort of fully engaged Jrue Holiday defensively more this year. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the Bucks are the best defense in the league and dramatically better than they were last year. And Jrue Holiday has been like that. And again, maybe some of it too is like, hey, having Brook Lopez healthy kind of makes everybody look better, et cetera. But yeah, Drew's he's been terrific. He's been incredible. He's been, kind of the rock of this team this season, given the injuries. And, Giannis has missed 12 games. It's not like he's missed, a really extended period, knock on wood. Hopefully he'll stay healthy the rest of the season. But yeah, you can't say enough about Jrue. And again, that doesn't even go into kind of just the kind of guy he is, the locker room presence he is. I mean, it really is remarkable. Again, just like zooming out for a minute, right? I was talking to a coworker of mine. I was explaining to him kind of my Bucks fandom, the guy that I kind of recently met. And
goodness gracious, I hope he had a few hours spare when you started this conversation. Jeez.
Well, the funny part is he then acknowledged to me that he actually started collecting. He's been doing it for a little while, but he collects like basketball cards and like sports cards and stuff. And so he said he has some like Giannis like autograph cards that like he's collected over the years, but he said he still doesn't know how to pronounce his last name. So I tried to give him a little tutorial on that. But I was just telling him, I was like, man, like, I was telling him about going to see the Bucks win a championship with my dad and all this. And I was just like, you could not pick a better franchise player. Like, you could not architect a better, human being to build your franchise around than Giannis. But then to also have Jrue, to also have Chris, to also have Brook Lopez and a lot of the complimentary guys. It's just, I mean, again, like, we try to tell people, like, enjoy these moments, enjoy these random regular season games, enjoy this stretch of greatness that we're seeing from this team. Again, sports, nothing lasts forever. And we're in the golden era of Bucks basketball right now. And to be able to not only see this team succeed the way it has, but to do it with the kind of people that you want to get behind, right? And we obviously have had some conversations about, the type of people you want to root for, whether it's owners or players, things like that. We are very much spoiled in the fact that we get to cheer for people like Giannis and Jrue and Brooke and Chris and, Joe Ingles and all these guys, right? Like it's just a great group of people. And, again, nothing specific about tonight necessarily that makes us have to say that, but I think it's always good to sort of just kind of pause. And honestly, this is why the national media doesn't make as big a deal about the Bucks, because they're boring. Like, they're not controversial. They have no Kyrie doing crazy stuff. They don't have LeBron trying to draw attention with, random tweets and things like that, right? Like they're boring in the best way possible. And, Giannis talked to your boy, Timmy Bontemps, about, feeling maybe a little underappreciated, but being totally fine with it and saying, hey, all the great players typically are to an extent. And I think that sort of is pretty emblematic of the Bucks, right? Like, yeah, they probably feel like people don't really notice them, but I think they're okay with that. They're just a group of guys that kind of just do their job. And obviously during the past month, right, they finished February without a loss, and now starting the month of March with another win. They're clearly a team that is very comfortable in their own skin, and it's just been super fun to watch. So again, now we're getting to that time of the calendar year where we're getting close to the playoffs, and it's just about hitting your stride. And right now, just maintaining it, right? And I think when you talk about like Giannis and the MVP and the buzz and attention on the Bucks, I mean, unfortunately, if they lose against the Sixers on Saturday, right, like a lot of the positive buzz of winning 16 games will be kind of flipped, and it's like, oh well, but the Sixers beat them. So needless to say, Kane, I really want this win on Saturday. I would happily trade a loss next week for beating the Sixers on Saturday. And you talk about Giannis MVP odds. No better time to make an MVP case than against another fellow MVP candidate like Joel Embiid. So, fingers crossed the Bucks can bring their best again on Saturday against a really tough Sixers team, because obviously, forget about narratives again. Just another opportunity to hopefully bank another win and kind of create some more kind of breathing room and cushion atop the East. But in the meantime, a couple days to just sit back and savor it.
Absolutely. And I should say, because we didn't podcast after the Brooklyn game, we're going to podcast on Saturday night after the Philly game. It's going to be one that everyone is interested in, whether the Bucks win or lose. So that'll be a makeup podcast. We always try and do that. So we'll get that done on the weekend. Subscribe and you'll know when we drop that show on YouTube or the audio platform. Just quickly, because there was actually a Bucks roster stuff today. So I want to get to that before we wrap up this show. Just quickly, this isn't another ad read, but I quickly looked at FanDuel just when you were talking about the Jrue Holiday stuff, because it's interesting. And we know this, win the Defensive Player of the Year. So Brook Lopez currently second favorite for Defensive Player of the Year. Giannis is fifth favorite. Jrue Holiday not even listed. And they're all big men. There's about 15 names here, and they're all big men. We know that's the way it works. But just another element of Jrue Holiday that is underappreciated, because I think you can put on lock. He's going to be one of the old defensive players. He's going to be on one of those teams, and yet he doesn't seem to be in the mix for Defensive Player of the Year. So whatever. He should have won last year ahead of Marcus Smart anyway. All right, I'm going to ask you about Sandro Mamukelashvili after this. All right, Frank. So there was some roster stuff today, which, I got to be honest, was a little bit surprising. And yes, Frank, I am a man of incredible integrity and honor. So I am going to say that The Athletic had this report first, and they tweeted it out. But then Adrian,
where was Timmy Bontemps? Where was Timmy Bontemps on the Mamu beat? Come on, no respect.
I think Timmy Bontemps does a good job, by the way. So I just want to make that clear.
I listen to the Windy Pod all the time. I enjoy it.
But then Wojnarowski came in over the top, I think, with some added details. So look, essentially the Bucks have waived, and this is official now, they've waived Mamu, which is kind of surprising. In his second year where the Bucks played 65 games overall. Woj ended up tweeting some additional stuff, and I didn't read The Athletic, so if they put that there, I'm honestly not stealing credit here. But Woj said the team worked with his representation on release to help with Mamukelashvili's future options. Bucks vet roster offered limited opportunity. So look, that point of that isn't a surprise, and we didn't expect that he was going to play minutes for this team. Maybe the addition of Myers Leonard taking some extra stuff tipped him and his team over the edge, and they said, you know what, let's try and get somewhere else. We've got the back end of the season here. Maybe there's an opportunity to get some late season NBA minutes and maybe try and work out something to get in the league and play more regularly next year. Do you have any point or thoughts on this? It's not an earth-shattering development, but I think in general, we talk about guys that I think we've enjoyed little moments with, and he's obviously been funny around the team. We've got some good content. I hope he does well. I'm not necessarily surprised that he would get to the point where I say I'm at an age where I need to try and get to a spot where I can play.
Yeah, I think that's just it. I mean, obviously a team like this is always going to be a really hard place to find a regular role. And, we saw encouraging signs certainly in summer leagues, encouraging signs through his play with in Eurobasket with the Georgia national team. I mean, it's just one of those things, like at some point, when does it make sense to kind of cut a guy loose and see if maybe he can find a role elsewhere? And, unfortunately, obviously didn't have many opportunities this season, but I mean, you look at the numbers, like, last year, to his credit, I mean, he hit shots. Like when he played, he hit shots. I think he struggled more defensively last year than he did this year. I think he did make some strides there. The on-off numbers were not the disaster this year that they were last year. But again, I mean, he's supposed to be an offensive player. I mean, that's kind of where he's supposed to kind of earn his money. And if he's ever going to carve out a role, it's going to be because he can knock down an open three. He can play make a little bit, attack the rim opportunistically, things like that. And he just didn't do that. I mean, and again, if he shoots 35% from three rather than what he shoot low 20s or something like that this season, again, do you keep him in that scenario? Like, it's all such small sample stuff that I don't know that how much the numbers are like the overriding thing here. But I think, again, they probably just looked at the reality that he's on a two-way contract. We've talked about maybe there's some possibility the Bucks take one of the two ways and convert them late in the season and make, that guy a 15th roster spot. But I mean, even us, longtime AJ Green / Gerber baby skeptics, even we were talking about how AJ Green probably made more sense to be the guy that you convert among the two ways. And so I think that probably just says it all, because I don't think either of us is looking at AJ Green as like a playoff player either.
True, but Frank, I have to admit when I was wrong. I didn't think he was going to have any meaningful moments in the regular season. I was
and he
wrong.
Did again tonight. He did a nice job again tonight, hit more threes tonight, And let me say there was the stretch of the game where AJ Green, Grayson Allen, and I'm forgetting who, and Pat, I think, were all out there together against like a lineup. It was like Giannis, Javon Carter, AJ Green, Pat Connaughton, and Grayson Allen against a lineup that was like, it had like three pretty big guys. I can't remember. I think Bol Bol was one of them, maybe Franz Wagner, and I don't know if Wendell Carter was out there. I was just like, but wait, why are you stacking all your little white dudes against this lineup of all? But anyway, but yeah, AJ Green's been a very nice surprise, and probably more importantly, I mean, you got Jay Crowder, and that probably more so than anything, means that like there's no power forward minutes for Mamu that are going to materialize here. He couldn't get minutes essentially even when the Bucks were down to like zero power forwards and like Giannis was out, right? There were nights where he wasn't playing, even when they were desperately in need of a four-man. So yeah, I think again, it's just, especially with guys you draft, guys you get connected to, people that, I think everything we heard about Mamu is that he was a good guy, and somebody that everybody would want to root for. At some point you just say like, hey, probably makes sense to try something else. So again, like, signing another two-way guy, I'm assuming they might have, there's no reason for them not to sign another two-way guy. That person won't be playoff eligible either way. So it's not like this move has anything really to do with what the Bucks can do in the postseason. But as you said, hopefully it's an opportunity for Mamu to maybe find a place that, with a worse team that can actually give him a chance to play a little bit. Maybe find a tanking team that can throw him a bone, get him some run.
Yeah.
I mean, Yorgos Kalaitzakis played like a crazy amount of minutes for the Thunder last year when they were tanking, right? So if Yorgos can play last year during the kind of last month of the season, come on, somebody give Mamu a chance to come in and, be the tank commander, and he could actually probably play, do a better job playing NBA basketball. So yeah, it's so hard to say goodbye. Alas, another late second round pick that, doesn't pan out for the Bucks. But as we generally warn people, that's generally just sort of how those things go. It's just very hard to find guys at that point in the draft, especially when you have a pretty stacked roster and find somebody that's actually going to carve out some minutes. So fare thee well, Mamu. And, we'll see kind of what's next for him.
No question. And as we said, we hope that he can get some minutes. And I bet you he'll put up some stats. And I guarantee you there'll be someone in the YouTube comments or on Twitter tweeting at me saying, see, the Bucks don't develop anyone. And it's like, okay, well, that's
Jordan Nwora has had like a couple randomly good stat games here lately, guys.
I've
oh, Jordan Nwora. But I think we saw enough. I feel like people were forced to watch enough of Jordan Nwora that they're just like, good luck, Jordan, but no thanks. It wasn't going to happen here.
Another guy I hope does well, though. As you said, it's not. All we can do is sit here and look at all these likable guys the Bucks bring in. You want them all to do well and make plenty of money and have a long career. All right, check out the Locked On Game to Game podcast as well. Get nightly recaps, analysis, stats, and everything you need to know from the local hosts across the network every day on your Locked On NBA feed. It's a great podcast. Check it out. Subscribe, like, drop a comment, help us out. We appreciate it on the Locked On Bucks feed on the audio platform or YouTube. Frank, I've got to go get to a birthday dinner. And by a birthday dinner, I mean I'm just going to have a shower, put some clothes on, and take my mum out to dinner because I am not cooking tonight. But I've got to go do that. We still have a podcast tomorrow. You pointed to it. Day off for the Bucks. And just get ourselves geared up for this Sixers game. I've got to be honest. By the time Sunday afternoon here, Saturday night in the US rolls around, I'm going to be pretty fired up for this Sixers game. It's going to be fun.
It's going to be a big game, national spotlight game. Hopefully both teams are healthy and hopefully the Sixers suck and the Bucks dominate, but if it's a good game, great, then hopefully the Bucks win another game. But 16 wins, hard to believe the 18 win mark that they had with that streak back in the 1920 season is actually in play. But I don't know, at some point they're going to have to lose. But it certainly is fun to just see them continue to rack up wins, and hopefully the Celtics can lose another couple games here, another game or two here, so they don't immediately fall back into second place when they do lose at some point. But hey, at this point, the big thing to me is, I think as we've talked about, if you can just put some distance between yourself and the Sixers and at least guarantee yourself, more or less a top 2 seed, I think that's a pretty good place to be. Regardless of kind of other stuff, I don't really want to see the Celtics in the second round again, especially if you're potentially not going to have home court. So let's just stay healthy, keep winning basketball games, and man, for number 1 seed would be pretty awesome. And especially if you're thinking about Giannis MVP candidacy, Giannis MVP narratives, would be having the best overall record, especially given how good the Nuggets have been as well. That's probably pretty important. I don't see a path to Giannis winning MVP without necessarily having the best record in the league. But if he does, then, the best player on the best team, who's the best player in the world, that tends to be a pretty, kind of easy narrative to spout off. But anyway, we'll see. Kind of get into the fun part of the calendar for sure.
Yep, the Bucks have won 16 in a row. My championship-winning Geelong Cats in the Australian Football League finished the season on a 16-game winning streak. So it's a very, very nice number. I like it a lot. All right, we'll be back tomorrow. Locked On Bucks.